In the previous video, the protagonist ended her relationship with Ji-wook after discovering that her father, who was wrongly accused of starting a fire at a prosecutor's house and even died in the accident, involves the trauma of his beloved, because that residence was his family's, and Bang-hee knows that for Ji-wook, her father will never be as innocent as she claims. So in order for both parties not to be hurt any more than they already are, the woman decided to put an end to the couple. I'm Nina, and in today's recap we'll see Suspicious Partner. With nowhere to go, since she was living with Ji-wook, the protagonist decided to borrow Ji-hae's sofa to sleep on for a few days, and although they had been rivals for a long time, Bang-hee says that the woman owes her for being her boyfriend's mistress and for all the bad things she had done. The next day, the protagonist isn't feeling well, has a bit of a fever and thinks about not going to work because of this and also because of the end of her relationship, but Ji-hae tells her not to spend her life depending on people, so she should get up and go after her dreams, because at the moment, Ji-wook's law firm is the only one that will accept her because of her imprisonment for Hee-jun's case. So Bang-hee listens to her rival's advice. Actually, more or less, because on the spot she hands Ji-wook a letter of resignation, and the man starts to say that the protagonist should divide her personal and professional life, but as it's difficult at the moment for both of them, he'll give her a few days vacation to think about what she really wants to do, both in her job and in her relationship. In the next scene, we see Ji-wook going to the chief prosecutor to clear up some doubts about his parents' accident, since the man was the prosecutor in the case, and the lawyer asks how the fire started, why the suspect was charged, since they had no evidence linking him to the accident, and Moo-young only replies that it was Ji-wook who classified him as guilty in court when he was little. Over the next few days, the protagonist got worse and worse, so much so that she ended up in hospital, and Ji-hae called Ji-wook to warn him. When the lawyer arrived at the hospital, he rushed over to Bang-hee's bed, and the woman thought it was a dream, because she had a very high fever and was a little delirious, so she pulled Ji-wook's face close and gave him a kiss, all the while repeating that she wished it wasn't a dream, even though the man explained that it wasn't. A few days later, when the protagonist is better and on a date with her mother, she receives a call from the police station, telling her about a former student of hers who witnessed a crime and said he wouldn't talk until Bang-hee was with him. As the boy can't remember the face of the person who committed the act, he ends up being taken by the protagonist to Ji-wook's office, and there he tells her that his parents have passed away, so today he lives with a couple who don't pay any attention to him, even saying that he's like Harry Potter. The child ends up in Ji-wook's care, because the person responsible for him didn't even bother to pick him up or anything. And the two end up forming a beautiful bond, so much so that Ji-wook sees himself in the boy, having had to witness at that age, and encourages him to do the same, supporting him and being there for him when the child has nightmares. Meanwhile, the protagonist gets a lift from Eun-hyuk and discovers that he went to the hospital with Ji-wook when she was ill, at which point the woman realizes that the kiss she gave the man was real and not a dream, and then she feels ashamed because she had just broken up with him and then kissed him. Bang-hee thinks that Ji-wook must think she's crazy. The next day, when the protagonist goes to pick the boy up from school, he isn't waiting for her at the front, as they had agreed, so she starts looking for him and finds him scared talking to the policeman, who asks him if he was running away from someone. Bang-hee tells the man that he has already talked to the investigator on the case and that he doesn't need to worry about the child testifying or not. And in the next scene, we see that the little boy is ready to talk about what he saw that night, and he manages to recognize the culprit inside the police station. The boy points to the policeman he spoke to near his school and says that it was him. The child remembered because of the sneakers the man is wearing that are the same and the ringtone on his cell phone. Soon the man was arrested, and this triggered memories in Ji-wook too. It seems that when he was a boy, he only pointed out Bang-hee's father as guilty, because the prosecutor leaned towards that accusation, to cover up a mistake by the prosecution and not lose his job. In fact, the protagonist's father was the one who got him out of the house and ended up losing his life when he went back to get Ji-wook's parents out. Now we see the protagonist. She's gone to visit Hyun-soo and receives a call from Eun-ho asking about his condition. Everyone is anxious for him to wake up so that the man can be tried, but unfortunately Hyun-soo is still unconscious. But as she turns around, Bang-hee is startled to see that Hyun-soo has woken up and is standing behind her, but the man doesn't seem to remember who she is. Soon the prosecutor's office is alerted that Hyun-soo has woken up and the doctors have carried out tests on him to see if there has been any damage to his memory, so Ji-wook and the protagonist won't be able to have contact with him for a short time. In the evening, we find out that Ji-wook has sent a letter to the prosecutor's office to try to become a prosecutor again, and Young-hee wanted her son to continue as a lawyer, but she knows that he wants to be like his father, so she supports him, but it won't be easy, since Moo-young is the chief prosecutor. The next day, Ji-wook goes to the hospital to get news about Hyun-soo from Yoo-young, and the woman explains that there is no damage to his brain to indicate that he has memory loss, but it could be that he has temporary amnesia, or there is the possibility that the man is faking it so that his sentence will be less when he goes to trial. We'll just have to wait and see how Hyun-soo acts over the next few days. At the office, Ji-wook asks the protagonist to come back to work. The man says that they don't need to sort out their personal things right now, but she is needed at the office, and so Bang-hee's vacation comes to an end. When the workday ends, Ji-wook takes her to the entrance of Ji-hae's building, which coincidentally is the same building Yoo-young lives in, and the lawyer catches Eun-hyuk arriving at the building with her, which makes him a little uncomfortable, considering the three's past. Afterwards, the two men say goodbye to their companions and go drinking together. Ji-wook ends up venting after a few drinks about what's going on between him and Bang-hee, and the man also ends up saying that he doesn't care about what's going on between Eun-hyuk and Yoo-young. The next day, Ji-wook goes to see Hyun-soo while Yoo-young isn't with the man and brings him photos of the people he's killed, in order to remind him of the crimes, while the man shows him an album of the students from the school he used to go to and can't continue questioning him because he has to take a call. At that moment, Hyun-soo recognized a student in the album and tore out her photo, so that some memories came flooding back, such as the crimes he had committed. However, as soon as Ji-wook returned to his room, Hyun-soo acted as if he hadn't remembered anything and handed the material over to the lawyer, who left. After a while, Hyun-soo is back in action. He manages to get the attention of a policeman who was at his door so that the man doesn't run away, and he knocks him out, then steals his clothes and escapes from the room. But as soon as she passes the prosecutor, she realizes it's him, and Yoo-young runs after the man, who leaves her passed out on the hospital's emergency stairs, after which Hyun-soo flees. At this point, Ji-wook realizes that something is wrong and decides to open the album that he had given to the man, so he finds out what may have been the reason for him committing the crimes, and it's something that involves this student. The lawyer goes back to the hospital, but ends up discovering that Hyun-soo has run away and that Yoo-young had a fight with him, but the woman is fine. Meanwhile, the protagonist and Eun-hyuk were already investigating a student who was abused at the same school where Hyun-soo was studying. They interviewed the mother of the girl, who unfortunately took her own life, and the woman recognized Hyun-soo, however, as one of the 7 boys who had done this to her daughter. Now we see Hyun-soo. The man is wandering around the places he remembers, trying to understand why he committed those crimes and what Bang-hee has to do with this story. Since he couldn't do it alone, he decided to go to the office at night, taking advantage of the fact that everyone wouldn't be there, and waited for her sitting in the dark. The protagonist answered Hyun-soo's question as to why he felt he had to get rid of her, at which point the man came at the woman to use his knife on yet another victim. However, we're already familiar with Bang-hee's martial arts skills, and she manages to turn around. Then Ji-wook comes down, having heard the noise, and the two of them immobilize Hyun-soo, but after the adrenaline wears off, we discover that the lawyer has been injured. The man is then arrested and Ji-wook is rushed to hospital, but he's fine. He'll just have a scar to look after until he's 100%. In fact, the protagonist feels bad that he was stabbed instead of her, so she takes care of the man's medication and dressing changes as a way of showing her gratitude. And since Ji-wook recently learned that Bang-hee's father wasn't the real culprit in the fire that led to his parents' death, he decides to tell the protagonist and reveals that the man took the blame because Ji-wook had pointed it out to him when he was little, since Moo-young had instructed him to do so, and even though Bang-hee knew he was just a boy, he can't disguise his annoyance. The next day, we see Young-hee with the chief prosecutor. The gentleman has gone to the man to tell him that he should put Ji-wook as prosecutor again, because there was no one better than him in the job, and that as much as Moo-young doesn't want to believe it, the one who took Hee-jun's life was Hyun-soo, not Bang-hee. The gentleman says that if the man analyzes the cases carefully, he'll realize that it was him. Later, Moo-young receives someone else. The protagonist has gone to the place to talk about the mistake he covered up using his father and how much it affected her family. Then the man accuses her of a crime the woman didn't commit and tells him to think about how his mother got through it twice. Bang-hee adds that apologies will never change these mistakes he made, because it will be engraved in the woman's family history. Moo-young begins to take a closer look at Hyun-soo's case and ends up watching live as he confesses to Yoo-young that he took the lives of his son and some other men. Hyun-soo hasn't confessed to all the crimes we know he committed, but at least that's something. So when Moo-young passes the protagonist in the prosecutor's office, he apologizes for all the suffering he has caused her. And we see that today will be the day of Hyun-soo's transfer. However, instead of him remaining with the prison guards, the chief prosecutor manages to get the man taken to his car. In the next scene, we get heartwarming news. After so much misfortune, Ji-wook has got his job as a prosecutor back. What did you think of these episodes? I hope you enjoyed the summary. Leave your suggestions in the comments and subscribe. If you liked the video, like it and share it to help me. Until next time.